Good evening, I'm Connor Alforque. Welcome to Uncensored, right here on 6 News. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, Campbell Newman is sitting down with us to discuss his time as Queensland Premier and his unsuccessful run in the Senate for the Liberal Democrats earlier this year. This is the first time he's spoken in depth about his campaign, and now he's revealing why he thinks he didn't get in. In addition, his relationship with the media, Clive Palmer, and calls for a Queensland upper house are also discussed, unedited and uncensored. And just a reminder, if you want to see more exclusive interviews and support our work, please head to patreon.com/SIXNewsAU and donate just $4 a month to see exclusive benefits and help keep us independent. Here is that interview in full. So Campbell Newman, welcome to 6 News.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, you stormed to power with what was the biggest parliamentary majority in Australia's political history, but after just 3 years, you lost that. What do you think was the biggest contributing factor, the media or yourself?
Oh, look, I think there's a variety of factors. There's decisions that we took that, in combination, hurt us, and so, of course, I take responsibility for that. And by the way, if there's a whole heap of them, and if just one fewer, I guess, controversy probably would have got us across the line. But also, yeah, I think there was a really, I suppose, difficult relationship with the media, and I compare that to the way the current state government is treated, and it is chalk and cheese. So it had quite, I think that had quite a deal to do with the outcome at the end of the day.
Do you stand by your comment that the media is a pack of bastards?
Oh, back in that period, yes they were, and they all now work for the Premier. Almost to a man and woman, they've been recruited by the current government. And I contrast the way that they dealt with the issues of the day during my period with the failure right now to prosecute the real issues of integrity and governance in Queensland. I mean, they're letting Queenslanders down, the people that are there now, in contrast to the people who actually work for Palaszczuk, who were the media pack back between 2012 and 2015. They weren't about presenting a government in a reasonable way. They were about trying to bring down a government, and that's quite clear by the way that they operated.
So it doesn't matter Labor or LNP, they just want to bring down the...
No, they were of a left-wing persuasion, and they had an agenda to bring down the government. I know that because on election night, one of the people who now works for the Premier, actually admitted to my senior media advisor that they'd had an agenda. I was quite unashamed. Mind you, that individual was quite surprised by the result that they'd helped achieve.
Was this a personal agenda or one that was sort of instituted from top down in that institution or that news organisation?
Oh, look, I'm not sure. I think it's a collective thing amongst the journalists concerned. I mean, let me explain. It's like, I watch media interviews these days with Anastasia Palaszczuk. Well, when she won't answer the question. They put the question to her, she doesn't answer it, or she gives an answer that really demands professionally a follow-up question, and Palaszczuk doesn't get it. In contrast with me, they would keep asking the same question again and again, and then they would show 3 or 4 iterations of a similar answer that I might have given. Now, that's something I was entitled to do if I had to answer it in a certain way, and they didn't like the answer, that's fine. But why do they then deliberately show, for runs around the rich tops? And there's a whole lot of that stuff. Another typical way that a story was presented in our time in government is that we would make a hard decision and we would go out and say why we were making it. And the way it was then packaged on the news would have been sort of Premier or Minister says this, but here's the opposition saying it's a bad idea, and here's someone from a union saying it's a bad idea, and here's Fred from Queen Street Mall, he says it's a bad idea, and here's Sally from Chermside, she's saying it's a bad idea, here's the opposition again saying it's a bad idea, and then we have the Premier saying this is why we're doing it. That's not fair and reasonable packaging, and again we don't see that today. So I'm pretty indignant about the way that my government was treated by the electronic media. Now, in contrast, the Courier Mail, the Australian Financial Review and the Australian all editorialised and said that my government was a really competent high-performing government. Before you go today, I'll give you a copy of one of the articles, an editorial that was published by the Courier Mail only 3 or 4 weeks prior to the election. So, that's the considered assessment of what we were doing, as opposed to the quite deliberate negative way that it was presented on TV.
Yeah, but there are also examples of the Courier Mail somewhat going rogue and sort of slashing your government when you were Lord Mayor in particular. There was one reporter who said, "Don't expect decent coverage of the budget if we don't get a drop." Your own media advisor described their reporting as vindictive. Why do you think that suddenly changed when you became Premier, and why was it like that when you were Lord Mayor in the first place?
Well, I think one of the problems was when I was Lord Mayor is that there was a combination of personalities between the media advisor or two in my office and the Courier Mail at the time. And it wasn't so much me in terms of the Courier, but it was the personalities, literally relating to one another. So the actual quote you gave me is literally what happened at the time between personalities jostling, and it got probably out of control.
So if you had to pick a favourite media outlet, it would be ones owned by Murdoch?
Oh, no. Look, it's like this. If you ask me who in the electronic media gave me the best and fairest run, probably the word is fairest actually, Connor. The fairest run that I ever got was with ABC TV. They're not the Murdoch media. And the reason I say that is that while they might have jumped on the bandwagon with a particular slant to a story and the way it was presented, they actually always presented the actual substantive announcement we were making. I mean, I'll give you another example of the way that we were treated. So I think it was basically in late 2013, on one occasion I went out with the Health Minister, Lawrence Springborg, to announce that by the following year, I think it was only within about 6 months, we were going to clear the surgery backlog for glaucoma and cataract treatments, and that affects older people in the community. So there was a waiting list, and we had an initiative. We were going to clear it totally, and we were prepared to say by this date it will be done. So we went and did the press conference at the PA hospital, but that was the day that Clive Palmer had said some stuff about me and made a fairly defamatory suggestion that I had a mental health problem and I didn't take medication. And so what did they all ask me? After we made the announcement, I stopped and said, "Any questions?" There was not one question on the substantive announcement. The first question was, "Mr. Premier, Clive Palmer says you have a mental health problem, and you don't take your medication. Is that true?" But just ponder that for a second. It's for a start, it was defamatory anyway and outrageous, but that's all they wanted to cover. So that's the point I'm making. And that night on the news, 7 and 9 and 10 simply covered what Clive Palmer had to say, not the fact that there was important information for the health and well-being of older Queenslanders. In contrast, the ABC did cover the substantive story. Even though they covered the Clive Palmer stuff, they actually covered the substantive story. So that's a long answer, but I think that's a bit of evidence for you. The ABC were, I think, quite fair compared to 7, 9 and 10.
Don't you think the character of our leaders, of our political leaders, is important and in the public interest?
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And that's why I am dismayed with the way that we're seeing reporting these days generally, in that at the state sphere here, the only people who are holding the government to account in the media, as far as I'm concerned, relentlessly are the Courier Mail and the Australian. Occasionally, individual journalists at 7 and 9 do. I don't think the ABC at all. The ABC these days, by the way, are running, essentially it's like Pravda on the airwaves. They're just running the government line with little questioning and little hard questioning when it should be there. I mean, we've seen terrible things in the last 6 months with this state Labor government. Things that if that happened during my time as Premier, ministers would have gone, they'd have lost their jobs. And for the record, I did fire, I think, 3 ministers for not meeting the standard. This Premier's never fired anybody for meeting the standard. So, you know, there is a difference between the way these things have been covered.
Now, in 2013, Rupert Murdoch met with the editorial director of the then Courier Mail, made it clear he wasn't happy with how the Courier Mail was covering your government. Did Murdoch seek fair coverage, or did he seek favourable coverage?
I wasn't there, but I'll give you a copy of the biography by former journalist Gavin King, former state member of Parliament, and he talks about that issue. So I wasn't there. We can only go on what was reported to Gavin when he put together the biography on myself.
So why are you so indignant at the media then if the Murdoch press was favourable towards your government?
Well, they weren't.
They weren't? Well,
there's a trail of quite negative stories and very hard reporting from the Courier Mail and the Australian. I mean, you can go and through the 2011, for example, during the 2011-2012 election campaign, the Australian newspaper and indeed the Courier Mail went after me relentlessly, suggesting all manner of malfeasance on my part, making it sound like I was only one step away from going to the Crime and Corruption Commission. It was the CMC then. I've never been into the CMC. Okay. I've never been, but that was the suggestion in the reporting, that I'd done the wrong thing as Mayor of Brisbane. So look, they went in very, very hard for a long period of time.
So why do you think the media hated you so much then?
Well, you're telling me they do. I don't know if they do. I've got good relations with quite a few journalists. I think there's a problem though with the media where they seem to be more interested in what I call the froth and bubble, the gotchas and all that sort of stuff. They're not interested in the fundamentals of what is good government. For me, good government is a stable, prosperous society where people can live their lives, can bring up their families, have their kids get a great education, and have every opportunity to run their own business without government getting in the way. And that's what I was delivering, in contrast to the government now, which, in the last 2 weeks has created massive uncertainty for the future of the mining industry by massively increasing royalties. And that's what they call sovereign risk, which means that people won't necessarily invest in mines in the future because they can't trust the government. So, that's what journalists should be interested in, not about whether, some opponent has said that the Premier's got a mental health problem. I mean, how would you feel if someone professionally came to you and accused you in a public forum of having a mental health problem? I mean, mental health is meant to be a serious issue today. Why didn't they condemn the person who made such a thing about it? Another example is that when the Qatar Australia Party ran homophobic campaign ads against me because I backed gay marriage. There's an issue that needs to be dealt with here, and it's about we need journalists to be looking for what we really need out of government, which is a government that takes the community forward and is honest and upright and tells the truth. And we don't have much of that around Australia at all at the moment.
Do you think society would be better off without the fourth estate as it currently exists?
No, of course not. Absolutely. I guess that's what I'm complaining about, Connor. We need the media to do a better job in, so let's be crystal clear, in an era of misinformation and fake news, we need the media to be the people we can trust. It's vitally important. And the trouble with where the country is going at the moment, you've got the woke media and you've got the Murdoch media, as you've said, and they're so partisan that it really just divides. Then the country just separates, and rather than just tell us the facts, let us make our own minds up, we're getting editorialised sort of content injected into supposed news stories, and I think it's killing us. It really is killing us. We need the media to be trusted, because I don't want to trust some galah on YouTube or something like that, or some blogger. I want to know that a report, whether it be on the Australian or on the Fairfax 9 media, some report on their website, I want to know I can trust it. And that's, by the way, the value proposition for journalism in 2022. In an era where newsrooms have been downsized and there's been a lot of pressure on, the media, the unique, selling proposition or value proposition for the media is, hey, we're professionals, you can trust us, and people will pay for that. So, like, I've got a subscription to the Courier Mail and to the Australian because at least I feel that I'm going to find factual information there, as opposed to nonsense on YouTube.
Is it factual information, or is it facts that you would side with on those sort of outlets?
Because when it comes to that's a fair question. When it comes to editorial sort of positions and that, I guess often with the Australian, I would support their position. Yeah.
Now, moving on towards just looking at your time as Premier, is there anything you'd like to tell us about Anastasia Palaszczuk and how she's currently governing the state? There's been integrity scandal after integrity scandal. You sat at her desk, you can see through the spin, so what sort of things is she doing right now that the public doesn't
the first
currently know
criticism
about?
is that she just, that they're not... Okay, the first thing is Queensland should be going ahead far better. This should be the lead state in terms of economic performance. We're being held back by a government that doesn't set a set of rules and have a long-term plan for the state, and then allows the private sector to go forward. So, when I was Premier, we created I think it was a 30-year plan for the state. We did that with a huge amount of community consultation. The MPs were all involved, Labor, LNP, KAP, etc. And we brought people from around the state to create that plan. Sadly, she's thrown that away. So I don't know what the plan is. For, it was bipartisan, essentially, creation, but she threw it out the door. So what is the plan for Queensland? I want Queensland to be the most prosperous, forward-looking state in the nation. We've got incredible natural resources. And incredible natural environment. So, I used to talk about the 4 pillars of property, the mining industry, tourism, and also student education and the like, as being these important things for the state. And they all could be going forward so much better, but they're not. Then there's the issue about integrity in government, where, if they won't play by the rules, if they won't be open and transparent about what they're doing, then what trust can we have in government? And I said this earlier on in the interview. They've never dealt with a minister who's done the wrong thing. Ministers who've used private email accounts for their actual work. I mean, that's not on. It's just not permitted. We've got a Premier who made a threat in the Parliament to withdraw resources from the Katter Party, and the Triple C found that essentially she may have broken the law, but then left it to the Parliament to actually decide what to do with it. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I guess the final thing is the financial position of the state. I mean, we continue to see runaway spending, no break or sensible look at how money is being deployed. At the end of the day, the chickens will come home to roost one day. And so, out of desperation, they put these coal royalties up, which, fine. It must be great to be able to milk the system. But think about this. This is a party who've been very anti-coal the whole time they've been in office, who say they want to get away from coal, but further increase the state's dependence on a fossil fuel that's supposedly going to be phased out. I mean, there's been a lot of commentary in the last 2 weeks about this royalty increase, but no one seems to get that bit of hypocrisy, that you can't say you're against this, or you say you want to transition from something, but then further increase your financial dependence. In other words, the ambulances running around today, the hospitals providing vital services, the police responding to crime, they're more and more reliant on getting money from the coal industry. Look, I could go on. We could have done an hour on the government and critique, but they've got plenty of other critics as well.
And having been in the top job and now with a bit of distance from that role, how easy is it to be corrupt as Queensland Premier?
I don't think, I wouldn't say that. I'm not saying that the Premier's corrupt at all. I mean, I think that's a big leap, and it would be defamatory for someone to actually say that about her. But you know, it's a government that is not run to the required standards of 2022. It's not open. It's not transparent. When people don't follow the rules, they don't get, you know, they don't get sin binned, and that's the problem here. You know, so you know, I think I'd put it. That's the way I'd put it, man.
Now, you fielded offers from the UAP and One Nation when you left the Liberal Party exactly a year ago now. Why did you decide to choose the Liberal Democrats, and why re-enter politics after famously declaring that
I was over? Yeah, no, yeah. That's a good point. Well, I guess it was really 18 months of COVID was probably the prompt, in that, you know, we have seen in the last 2.5 years freedoms being taken away from Australians, the increase in the size of the bureaucracy and its reach into our lives in a way that I could not have believed back in 2019, and I felt I had to take a stand. This country is a lot less free, we're a lot more controlled and bossed around, and public servants don't seem to remember public servant, and we're seeing government think it can really push people around, the citizenry around. And you know, we were locked up in this country for the best part of 2 years. An Australian passport was useless. I became incredibly disappointed with the Morrison government and also the state LNP. Of course I was disappointed with the Palaszczuk government, the way they handled COVID, and so I thought I had to take a stand. I tried to help initially from within the LNP, but it was made very clear to me, and this is a matter of the public record, that the number of key players didn't want me around. So I looked around, I left, and I did field an offer from the UAP and from One Nation. I decided to join the Lib Dems because their libertarian philosophy suits me. So they're for free enterprise, small government, low taxes. We want government out of people's lives. We think governments don't make good decisions about, you know, the future of people and their families. We think individuals themselves are the best placed people to actually, you know, run their own lives and take responsibility for their decisions. So, you know, that's why I joined.
Would you be prepared to name those people in the Liberal Party who didn't want you there anymore?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I had been asked by the Liberal National Party then president to actually come on and be a member of the executive. So there's a role which is known as a trustee. There's 3 trustees in the LNP, and the president asked me to come on and be one of those. The trustees look after the assets of the party. So I allowed my name to go forward, whereupon the federal president, John Olsen, who had been sitting in on the meeting, spoke and voted against me. So did Peter Dutton, the now leader of the opposition. David Littleproud, the deputy, as he is now, voted against it, and so did Jared Blay and Tim Mander. So those were the politicians in the room. The volunteers, you know, the actual hard-working men and women, the foot soldiers of the LNP, they voted for me. So I got up. I was actually endorsed. You know, I think it was a narrow vote, but it was, you know, in the low 50s for me, you know, the remainder against. But, you know, you think about this for a sec. After that, when the people who I was volunteering to help, the elected members, had said they didn't want me around, who then went and then were negative about the whole appointment with the media. So they went out and briefed the media, background the media, and made it clear they didn't want me there. Why would I stay around to help people like that? So I left.
And now the LDP was banking on your familiar name for Senate votes in Queensland, but that didn't turn out to be very successful, did it? Because the Legalised Cannabis Party, a party with almost
a spectacular result.
Was it a bit embarrassing then that they had more votes than your party? I
think they had a really good position on the Senate ballot paper for starters, and I guess it'd be interesting to try and do some research on why people did give them a vote. I actually think the reason for not doing as well as we expected, I mean, I expected about 7%, and we were just under 3%. I think the reason for that is I really put it down to, firstly, crowded space. So Hanson and Palmer. I think the people who didn't want to vote for the LNP had two main choices. One was Hanson, and those who didn't want Hanson we could have normally picked up, but they went to Palmer. I think the other problem, going back to the questions you've been asking about the media, how is it that we never got coverage in South East Queensland? So that's a big issue. So when I went regionally to places like Cairns or Roma or Gladstone, Rocky, you name it, the local media always wanted to talk to us. In South East Queensland, try this, in 9 months, apart from the day I announced that I was running, I was never interviewed by 9 or 7 in 9 months. In a 9-month period, I was never interviewed by ABC TV. They covered it, I acknowledge that, but they didn't interview me. In 9 months, I was on ABC radio twice, if memory serves me correct, and 3 times on 4BC. So if you can't get coverage despite your best efforts, and you'll get this complaint from Palmer's people and also from One Nation as well, I'm confident of that, but if you can't get coverage, how do you punch through? The bottom line, Connor, is I reckon on election day there was a majority of Queenslanders who didn't even know I was running. So that was the big problem.
We're running out of time here, but I've just got a few more questions just on state politics as well. So Six News has seen correspondence from you when you were Lord Mayor, where you say at an LNP state convention that support was given in principle for an upper house reintroduction. In 2013, when you were Premier, you then rejected calls for it to return, saying the last thing Queenslanders wanted was more politicians. Why did you change your position?
Well, I would like to see that letter from back in my Lord Mayoral days, because I honestly can't remember that, but I guess my position was to be against more politicians in Queensland when I was there, and I acknowledge that. And if you ask me what the correct position is, I have to say, with the passage of time, I think the position is that we do need an upper house in Queensland. So what I said as Premier was Leader of the Opposition and then as Premier was wrong. And for the record, remember who got rid of the upper house in Queensland? You do know which political party it was, don't you?
Not off the top.
It was the Australian Labor Party in the 1920s who engineered the whole thing. So, that's the background to it. Now, I felt at the time when I said what I said about not supporting it, I felt that we had enough politicians, but I think there's a serious problem with checks and balances, I'm afraid, in Queensland. So I guess that was a wrong call.
And we've spoken about Clive Palmer a fair bit. He's described you as a Nazi, criminal, less popular than
He's
Hitler.
Apologised for all that publicly too, though.
Because you guys are now working together.
No. We were on different. We were competitors.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he gave me that hat over. He gave me that hat over there, and he gave me that as well up there. See? Yeah.
Okay.
So look, we're on good terms, I suppose, the way to put it. Yeah.
And how did you sweep that under the carpet? And
how do you mean?
Like, how did you sweep all these things he said, and you're now just working together? Like,
well, you've got to be tough. Well, you've got to be tough in politics, and you've got to be robust, and you've got to be politics. I'll work with anybody for the future of the better future of Queensland or the nation. Okay, so there's lots of people who I've had big battles with in my time in politics, who I'm on very good terms with. For example, my former opponent in Brisbane City Council, David Hinchliffe from the Labor Party, he was the guy who ended up being commissioned to paint my official portrait as Premier. So life's too short to just have enemies, and if the battles have gone on or moved on, or the game is different, it's changed, then you've got to be flexible enough to change.
Okay, and I think that's all we have time for.
No worries, mate.
Campbell Newman, thanks so much.
Thanks, Connor.
Thank you.
And that is Uncensored for this Tuesday. A reminder, if you want to see more exclusive interviews and support our work, please head to patreon.com/SIXNewsAU and donate just $4 a month to see exclusive benefits and help keep us independent. And for an in-depth look at the state of the media, which was discussed in this interview, check out our Spin Check special, Why Are We So Mad at the Media? Available now on our YouTube channel and our website, SIXNewsAU.com. For now though, I'm Connor alforque. Thanks for your company. Good night.